Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I'm your host Hajra Sati, and joining me is my wonderful co-host and also who happens to be a mentor of mine, Fahim Bangesh. Assalamu alaikum, Fahim. How are you doing today?
Walaikum assalam, Hajra, and good morning. I'm doing wonderful as always. And it's good to be wonderful in the morning time because obviously the way you start happens to be, it affects the whole day. That morale of the morning time affects your whole day. So yeah, I am pretty enthusiastic and happy today and elated today. And for a change.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, and it's always glad to see your energy so high and uplifting because it is very contagious in the first place. But Fahim, I was reminiscing about my old days, especially as a young children, and I do remember that we used to came across the assignments, or especially in English and in Urdu classes, where we were asked to write letters. And those letters have such a deep memories inside them because usually they were around. We have to ask our grandparents or someone who's living in our villages that we want to spend our holidays with them, and that was the basic theme behind those letters, was to remain connected to your roots in the first place.
And also, sorry to interrupt, Hajra, the way they were so personalized, those letters, you could feel the presence of the other person in front of you while you were reading the letter, because in my childhood, my father was posted to Saudi Arabia, and the way we used to get the letters from our friends, family, relatives, it was so personalized, and that waiting time.
That's very true.
It would take, for international letters, it would take at least 15 days for the letter to reach you. And that happiness, that elatedness, and that feeling is just indescribable. And I pity the younger generation because they'll never be able to feel that.
Of course, and I think the amount of the effort that it used to take, so you have to take up the pen, you have to pen down the letter, and I don't think so you can feel the same happiness while you are writing on the digital platform or WhatsApping up or messaging someone or using any other computer mediated communication or any other form, because when you used to write the letters, obviously I do remember, so I had this obsession with having very neatness in my writing, so I used to change my papers, and you used to make sure that there is no mistake in that, but obviously as we have grown up, we have seen how the role of communication is changing, and with that perspective, and there was this message which was delivered by the Universal Postal Union's president by the United Nations office on to explain the importance of what does a post means, or what is the importance of the post office in the first place, because obviously the role of communication, the role of post has changed, especially now because this is a very fast pace, I would say, the economy or the society that is moving. So why not take a look at it? So we would further like to develop on this conversation, because according to United Nations website, presently over 5 million postal employees are entrusted with the duties to make sure that the people's goods, services, or whatever are delivered at their home steps. But we will further talk about how the role of communication has changed when it comes to specifically the post or the postal employees, and we are very glad that we have been joined by someone in the studio who happens to be a very old buddy of mine, a very close friend, and I think I'm meeting her after such a long time, and it is such a pleasure to have her on my show, because she is also a communication expert, and she's the best person to talk on the changing or evolving role of the post offices or the postal employees in the first place. So we are very glad that we have been joined by Hamna Aleem, who happens to be a communication expert. Assalamu alaikum, Hamna, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you so much for having me over. I'm so looking forward to this conversation with you guys.
It's lovely to have you, Hamna. Now that we know the theme of this year, it happens to be collaborating for a safe and connected future. We know how things have evolved. We know how things have been going in the modern era. But we also know that how the postal communication has been now limited to courier services, it has been limited to delivery services, and people are not personalized anymore like they used to be, because like Hajra was mentioning, it's a fast-tracked era that we're living in.
Definitely.
What are your opinions on this? Because obviously we're watching the systems evolve, we're watching everything evolving with the passage of time. So your opinion on this?
Yeah, so basically I would like to thank you guys for bringing this topic up and celebrating the World's Post Day on your platform. This is something that we have never really talked about. So if I just give you an example, few of us might have forgotten that we have so many memories attached to the era when post was the only way of communication. You know, there was this time when we all were eagerly waiting for the letters from our far away friends or from our grandparents. You know, there was this very unmatchable thrill when we used to open those envelopes, you know, feel the texture and smell the paper while reading the paper. So I think that's the actual essence of the World Post Day.
Right.
Although I believe that in this digital era, communication has been taken over by the technology, but this day's celebration will forever be cherished because it's very close to our heart. You know, like it's just one of those, I would say, handwritten love letters or presents tucked somewhere back in the drawer, you know, reminding us of the time when ink used to meet paper, and, you know, we together with ink used to craft memorable, for unforgettable love stories or friendships. So I think that's this day is all about.
And then there were pen friendships.
Yeah, there was another concept. You used to write pens to random people and strangers around the world.
Yes, that's very true, and I do remember. I think, of course, this tradition is still ongoing, but back in those days when people used to have a knack for the newspaper reading, so there used to be specific segment, and it's still going on, letter to the editors, right? And people were very particular and passionate about writing their responses. It was a sort of a two-way communication. But Hamna, now let's talk about the postal services, of course. And in the pandemic, we have seen the importance of postal services or the courier services, like Fahim mentioned here. There was complete lockdown, and only postal or the courier services or people who were employed there, they were going house to house and providing the services, right? So how do you see the evolving role of those postal services and couriers, especially in a very fast-track economy? Do you think Pakistan's courier services is better suited to the market reality?
So let's just take ourselves back to the pandemic time, you know, when the world all of a sudden started to feel smaller to all of us, you know what I mean? Yeah, so because we were supposed to maintain the social distances, the travel restrictions were there, so we really couldn't go anywhere. This is where the post services came as the unsung heroes for all of us to help us stay connected with our family members and our, I would say, ecosystem. So it not just only helped us send letters or parcels to people around the world or to our organizations, but it also gave us this security that, you know, we can remain safe within our environment while things are being delivered to us and to the other people around. It's just the same in Pakistan. When I talk about the pre-COVID time, did we ever imagine that we'll be, you know, ordering stuff online and they will be getting delivered to our doorstep? We always thought of going to the market, pushing the trolleys, walking around the aisles, picking stuff, and then going to the checkout. You know what I mean? So I think this whole thing has been changed, and this is where the postal services have come into being, and they have sort of made us realize that, you know, there's this significance of the postal services.
Of course.
You know, we never really thought that, you know, we'll be getting things with one click. Now they have sort of made us realize the convenience of online deliveries, and also I would say that they have also made us realize that you really do not have to go out of your places. You really don't have to waste the fuel, you know, and you should better work on preserving the environment and getting things at your doorstep.
That's very true. That's a very wonderful way of thinking. And I think one thing which Hamna alluded to, and I would really like to appreciate, because the way she talked about how the postal employees, they're unsung heroes. Because no matter what sort of terrain it is, no matter what sort of weather it is, no matter what sort of or how difficult it is to let your courier from one place to another place, it's a very difficult job, and I think it's a very thankless job in a sense, because everyone takes it for granted a lot, right? And they do it regardless of you know, whatever the conditions are, because it is their responsibility. So I would say yes, they are our unsung heroes. But Hamna, now let's come down to another important point, and which is about, do you think that they make our society or they foster the inclusion and connectivity, and I would say in a greater digital economy? How would you comment on their role in the first
That's
place?
a very good question, Haja. So I would like to put it in this way, that to me, post offices are basically the heartbeat of any community. It's just not the place where you just go and get your letters or parcels sent or delivered to the desired destination. I think it's more of a gathering spot for people. This is the place where people from the same neighborhood meet. This is the place where people from diverse communities meet, exchange stories, and will probably end up making lifelong, friendships.
Right.
So I think this is how the post offices
Right.
have created the close-knitted, inclusive community within the country. And if I talk about inclusivity here, I would really like to mention that the services that post offices are providing, which is not possible through digital communication, is how they are catering to people's need who have special needs and who require
Yes.
assistance and special services, I would say. If I just talk about the sector of our society that are elderly people or old age people who are not very tech savvy, I would say, they would prefer conventional methods of communication rather than sending a bank transfer through their mobile app. They would prefer sending a check to somebody. So I think post offices are catering to their needs as well. And there is another thing that I really wanted to mention here. We have seen small scale businesses around the world. We have seen local businesses around the world, but we really don't know which exactly is the force supporting them. I would say post office is what comes in between. How can we get those things delivered at our doorstep when the business is not of that large scale?
That's true.
Right? So basically post offices is facilitating them by providing them, I would say, cost-effective services and reliable delivery services to their customers.
And also, like Hamna, you were beautifully talking about the postal services. Also, since we know the young generation, how it is, right? They're born with gadgets in their hands and they don't really know the
Millennials,
beauty.
the generation
They,
X,
they really don't know the beauty of what the post is like. Do you think that we should be encouraging the schools and colleges and parents that they should be taking their children to post offices and talking about it and telling them about the unsung heroes like you very beautifully mentioned?
Yeah, so just like Hajra mentioned in the beginning, that there was this time we used to get our assignments where we had to write letters to our grandparents or to probably a
Khat
friend.
Navisi,
Yeah, exactly.
Khat
Khat likhna,
Navisi.
letters likhna or whatever.
Right.
So I think this is something that we have to inculcate into our new generation.
Yes,
Rather than asking them to send birthday wishes to their sibling or to their parents, why not we take them to the stationery shop and ask them to get a couple of cards and write a beautifully crafted letter, a message for their father, for their mother, or for their grandparents. So I think it's our responsibility. We are slowly and gradually taking the beauty of these things away from the upcoming generation. And it's on us, the onus will be on us if after 10 years, if somebody comes up and say that you never really taught us how to write a letter, or you never really taught us how to sort of inculcate the feeling of belonging to something.
Because just last week we celebrated the World's Teachers' Day.
Yes, yes.
And me and my wife, we made sure that we get a card from the market.
Wonderful.
We make our child write down the card for his teacher.
Right.
And when he presented that card, the happiness on the face of the teacher, that was beautiful, unexplainable, really.
That's very pretty, beautiful. And I think one thing is that because when you analyze the digital communications for him, you will see that often those writings or those communications, they are lost in the, I would just say, digital sea of bits and bytes, right?
Yes.
And your letters, they are preserved. I mean, obviously, as much as you would like to do it, they're always preserved because you can always read them up, you can always feel the texture, like Hamna beautifully mentioned.
You relive it. You
can
relive that
it.
time.
And that's wonderful, and that can be really morale boosting for a lot of people. Obviously, if good things are written in that letter. But Hamna, let's talk about, because United Nations launched a postal development report, right? So would you care elaborating just few important points in that particular report?
Sure. So I'm not really sure how many of our audience have got a chance to go through that report or not. But if I sort of mention few insights that we get from that report, is that after peak COVID time, post-COVID years have proven to be very positive in terms of postal development services.
Yes.
Right.
A lot of countries have improved their services. They are more efficient and they're more transparent now. There are so many countries who are actively making, efforts to be on the top of the list, to make sure that their performance is matched to become one of the best of the postal services in the world. If I name a couple of countries, I came across Germany, Japan, China, Austria, and Switzerland is on the top of that list with the highest score. But I personally feel like if you just go through those insights, what's the thing that make us the best postal service? I think all the organizations or all the services have to do the analysis, have to do their research or customer research, that what exactly their customer need or want. So while doing the research, they have to sort of tweak and change their business model in order to cater the new generation of postal customers, I would say.
Right, right.
And you can, how can you sort of tweak your business model? I think in that space, all the countries should come together, collaborate, and work towards the purpose-based research and development. That is the only way we can improve our services.
Because even the theme of this year is collaborating for a safe
Exactly,
and
and that's
connected
pretty much
future.
the report says about.
Lovely. So collaboration, you spoke about businesses. What about the collaborations between the educational institutions and the children, educational institutions and families, because that still has a long way to go rather than being digital all of a sudden. In writing things in person, delivering them in person to parents or grandparents on special days, and talking about the child's progress in schools. I think that would create, because back when we were younger, this used to happen. It would be delivered to our houses, but now we don't see that. We get emails, and okay, if I have time, I'll check the email, or maybe I'll forget later on. I won't check the email. I'll forget about it, and that, don't you think, would affect the child eventually, because the parents are so busy these days. Both of the parents usually are working parents. So what's your take on that?
So just like you mentioned that we have to collaborate with educational institutes, I believe that since what we do is whenever we are teaching students, we just tell them that we're going to upload it on portal and you can have a look of the slides and you can make your own notes that way. But while you're teaching the students, just encourage them to make handwritten notes. I think this is where we start off with. Encourage them to submit the handwritten assignments rather than the computer type assignments on Word or Excel, I would say. So this is how you sort of create a habit of writing things. And then when, just like you mentioned, when there are some festivals or important events or days coming up, just give them an assignment to, create or craft a card for your father, craft a card for your mother, and attach a handwritten note on it,
Right.
So this is how, these are the small practices that when we sort of
Which
inculcate
keep you
them,
in touch.
when we sort of inculcate them in our educational system, we'll make sure that our society and the upcoming generation has a know-how of it.
Yes, and Fahim, do you remember when we were growing up, there was one particular friend in our circle who has this hobby of collecting postcards, right? And that was such a lovely hobby of collecting different postcards and having
And
the
stamps.
very fine, exactly, stamps and collections.
And that was a task that we used to take our parents to take us to the stationery shop and get the Eid Mubarak cards or best wishes cards for the entire class fellows.
Yes, and I do remember whenever there was a summer vacation, so we used to distribute these summer vacation cards between our friends, and that was sort of, so I would miss you and something like that. And then there was a small, I would say, shairi in Urdu, dabbe mein dabba, dabbe mein phool, sab mera dost lakhon mein, something like that, right? It was such a beautiful feeling, reliving all of those. But I don't think so students nowadays are doing it, or maybe if they are doing it, I'm not very well versed with such sort of traditions that I do feel we need to take away from our childhood into the childhood of our coming generation or the kids nowadays. But Hamna, let's talk about how the postal services or couriers, they are extremely commoditized nowadays, right? So since you're a communication expert, how do you see South Asian market in particular, or Pakistani market in particular? Do you feel that they're more time sensitive and they are very market competitive in the first place? Because obviously nowadays online shopping means that you have to get those products delivered to your client's house, right? So how do you see that changing?
So Harsha, I would like to give you a holistic point of view that for every business, be it a postal service or anything, digitalization is important to stay relevant in industry and stay competitive in industry. And I think it's just the same case with the postal services, because it's a very fast-paced industry. We have to make sure that our services are reliable and quick. And the competition is, to be very honest, it's fierce in this industry. And you cannot compete without digitalization.
Of course, of course.
And how do you compete with the other in the industry is by making sure that your customers are satisfied. And how do we make our customers satisfied? We make them satisfied by making sure that they can have an access to their delivery parcel. They can track it online and see where the parcel has reached, and they can get notifications through messages on the update of the parcel. So this is how you can stay relevant in the industry. As far as you're concerned about the South Asian countries, so I believe that it's a very dynamic market.
Okay.
It's a very dynamic market and it's a very fast-paced market. There are some countries which are facing challenges in terms of infrastructure and connectivity, but on the other hand, there are some countries who are doing really well. So they have sort of adopted and sort of digitalize their operations and processes to make sure that they deliver the services on time. So yeah, I think it's a mix and match of both. Some countries are having a hard time, competing in this market, while others are slowly and gradually competing with the market.
Right. And Hamna, thank you so much for very succinctly putting it out there. But also when we talk about it, so I think visual representation always helps in explaining what we are talking. So Fahim, our research team has made a very wonderful package, and we would like to show that package because it relates to how the evolution of post has become, because the day was first marked in the burn, and that too in 1878,
yes.
right? And now it's 2023 and almost is becoming the 2024. So such a, I mean, time flies in this regard. But obviously there is a package, and let's see how things roll out in that future.
The World Post Day is celebrated every year on 9th of October across the globe to create awareness on the role of the postal sector in everyday lives. This day aims to create awareness about the role the postal sector plays in people's and businesses' everyday lives and the contribution of the post to the social and economic development of the nations. The United Nations in a statement said, in today's digital world, that fundamental role remains key, and this year's theme of the World Post Day is Together for Trust, collaborating for a safe and connected future. The postal network is immense and extends to many of the remotest communities. We can maximize its reach to help boost digital inclusion and drive progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. On 9th of October, 1874, the Universal Postal Union was formed at an international conference held in Bern, Switzerland, with the participation of representatives of 22 countries. Pakistan Post joined the UPU as its 89th member on November 10, 1947. Later on, 9th of October, 1969, was declared as the World Postal Day by passing a resolution raised by this organization at the United Nations. On this day, several philatelic exhibitions are organized, and new stamps and date cancellation marks are issued.
Right, and that was a wonderful evolution, and that brought back a lot of childhood memories in the first place. But we would like to wrap up our segment and say thank you to Hamna. Thank you so much, Hamna, for coming here.
Thank you so much, guys, for inviting me.
Thank you. It has been a complete pleasure. Thank you very much for coming in.
And it has been a very wonderful cross-pollination of ideas, and I think we went back down to the memory lane of our childhood, when we had so many wonderful memories regarding writing, penning down the letters, pen pals, whatnot. And there's a very wonderful competition which is also at the United Nations website about writing a letter. So I would encourage all the young kids who are between the age of 9 to 15 to write that letter and participate in that competition, because that, like Hamna mentioned, sort of revives or keep the spirit of writing the letters alive.
And the onus is actually on us to keep that spirit alive and to keep the young generation in touch with the spirit of the post.
Right, and with that we will take a short break, so don't go anywhere, because after you come back we have a very interesting discussion lined up, so let's not go anywhere. Good morning.
Welcome back to World This Morning with Hajra Satti and Fahim Bangish, and we had a lovely discussion before the break, and now, as we told you earlier, we are going to have a very interesting discussion, because we know that World Mental Health Week is currently underway, and we are going to be talking about this because this is something which is quite ignored, not just in Pakistan, all over the world. Although we do see the West is somewhat improving with where the mental health is concerned, but as far as Pakistan is concerned, there is is still a lot of stigma attached with it. And whenever somebody is ill, mentally ill, going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist requires a lot of courage. Opening up to the family requires a lot of courage that, okay, I'm unwell, I actually need to see someone, I need to consult someone because perhaps I may be going down, perhaps I'm having suicidal thoughts, and so many other things and symptoms that a mental health patient has. But the huge stigma attached with it creates a huge hurdle for all the patients in Pakistan. Not all, I mean most of them. So to talk about that, Hajra, we have with us in the studio Ms. Ruma Shahid, who happens to be a psychologist. Ms. Ruma Shahid, welcome to PTV World.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So Ruma, we would like to start off this conversation like Fahim mentioned, and I would like you to bust this myth, because a lot of people, especially in the third world countries, they feel that people do not even have the basic amenities here, right? They do not have food to eat, and they do not have the basic survival, so kits, right? And when someone starts talking about mental illnesses, anxiety, depression, whatnot, their range of that, so a lot of people say that this is the condition or the disease of the first world countries, right? Where they have the basic amenities to fulfill. But yet in a third world countries or in a countries in the global south like Pakistan, we cannot afford to talk on that, right? So how would you respond to this particular criticism, and how would you like to bust this myth? Because I think depression and anxiety is as much common, but we don't talk about it that much.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad we're talking about it today. So first of all, you know what? I think it's important to talk about the stigmas associated to it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the stigmas are indeed very crucial when we look into details. I would sort of like to talk about the major stigmas that I have seen in my practice to begin with, and those stigmas, why I want to talk about them is because those are problems of a common person, right, in this part of the world. So one misconception about mental health and the stigmas associated to it is that people with mental health, they might be weak, or they might be sort of like low in their, like willpower. But you know what, that's not really true, because most of the people that I've seen who I have been helping out are the one who are with the strongest willpower, who come in with such motivation because they know they want to change their lives and go back to a normal life. And another misconception is that people believe most of especially the young kids that I see. So let me give you an example. There was this, I think she was 7 or 8 years old girl, came into my practice with her mom, and the first thing that her mom said was that my daughter is such an attention seeker. So that's another taboo and stigma attached to mental health. People think that, when our child is sort of like going into the phase where they sort of need like more attention, but that's not actually true. What they need to know is that it's a genuine illness, just like any other illness. It's a genuine condition that needs to be diagnosed, that needs to be treated, and it needs to be, dealt with professional help. Another one that I think is very important is people think that mentally ill people or patients, they must be violent, they must be very aggressive, and they might be dangerous to hang around with. Again, that's not true. In fact, they are the one who are actually the victims of violence. Right?
Right. So Roma, I would like to address you one another important point when it comes to mental illnesses like depression or anxiety, and this is about how there's this particular criticism that is leveled by people, especially on the psychiatrists, which is that they always subscribe medicine, and in the end that benefits the pharmaceutical industry, right? And they're not addressing the root causes that are particularly present in the society or the environment. So for example, there was a very brilliant article in The Guardian, and it spoke about how black people are very overly medicated, overly diagnosed, so these medicines do not actually help address the racism which is present in their society, which is actually contributing towards their depression or anxiety in the first place, right? So when you say that you need to take the pills because your brain is not functioning well, and you're not addressing the actual root causes of the social or stimuli that is actually.
To add on to that, because I've actually seen some doctors doing that prescribing anxiolytics which cause dependency, and which is actually counterproductive, I would say, because just to gain a short-term advantage, you're making somebody dependent on an anxiolytic.
true,
Just
yeah.
an example that I'm giving you, because
Right.
even if it's depression,
Yeah.
rather than giving a long-term treatment for that, you're giving a short-term treatment.
Of
And
course.
I've actually seen that, so that's why
That
it's
is
quite
true,
pertinent.
and it's actually
Right.
happening.
Right.
But the thing is that some mental health illnesses, they actually do require medication intervention, and also having that said, it's also important to know that medication intervention and psychotherapy should be combined, right?
Right.
I mean, there are some people, psychiatrists out there, who do sort of like promote the medication industry and pharmaceutical industry, but it's important that you also seek therapy with medication. Medication can be a quick intervention to deal with conditions such as when the illness is very serious and the patient is having psychosis or suicidal thoughts. That's when it gets very important to get medication. But on the other hand, problems like if it's like minor depression or even mild anxiety problems, phobias, they can be treated only with therapy. It's not you don't necessarily have to take medications with them.
Now, since you were talking about therapy, this term cognitive behavioral
Yes.
therapy, when people listen to this term, usually the expression or the reaction that I come across is, well, that's really expensive. I think I'm going to deal with it on my own. And I think I'm going to, this is just a phase, it's going to pass.
Yeah.
And be it ADHD, be it OCD, be it an anxiety disorder or depression or any other, I would say, fatal mental disorder, they would not go for therapy, and they would rather say that, okay, it's a phase.
That is true as well. And let me address this. And that's again another taboo associated with it, that therapy is something for a certain class. It's not for everybody, like the middle class or the lower class. But again, I do understand the sort of like the cost attached to it, but there are many organizations, including one that I work for, that they do provide therapy at a very low cost. In fact, they also provide free therapeutical sessions to help people out who really need help. And so yeah, that's something that people can benefit from. There are a number of NGOs as well that do provide counseling services at a very low price. So I think, that's something that people should seek.
Right. And also, I would like you, Roma, to address this very conception, or I think that's a taboo, of the happy pills, right, in the market. So whenever you have anxiety, depression, or any sort of mental illness, and so obviously in the life you do face the low moments, you do face the weak moments when you're not feeling very high enough, but then there's this thing going on in the society that you can always elate your mood with the happy pills, right? The one that are subscribed by maybe a psychiatrist.
Not even so. I would add on to it
Yes.
that people usually self-medicate.
Of course,
because they're so commonly used, people self-medicate. Okay, maybe I'm going to get better with this.
Yes, yes.
So what about that?
How dangerous is that?
Yeah.
I mean.
Okay, so one thing about this, being in this part of the world, is that people can just misuse medication.
Of course.
Whereas, when you go to the West, for example, UK or USA, States, just any other part of the world, you can't get psych medication without a prescription.
Okay.
But over here, what I have seen is that people, if you know a certain guy at a pharmacy, they would just, hand out their prescriptions and medication. So that's one thing that is very dangerous.
Of course.
And number two, to answer your question about the happy pill, the thing is that there's not any such medication that, once you take it and you can't just, expect that your life would change
Of course.
drastically,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
There are a number of factors that you need to look into. For example, your environment that you're coming from, the people that you live with, your social connections, your academics, professional life, everything counts. You can't just, take a pill and then go home to the same environment where people are aggressive, where they're like constant conflicts going on. So it's important to address those issues instead of like just medicating people and, hoping that they will feel better.
Right, right. So, Roma, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of conversation and discourses surrounding the mental illnesses, especially nowadays, right? So, when we talk about mental health, and I think there's enough awareness going on because obviously we are observing this week and we're talking about it, and I'm pretty sure in the social media, on different pop cultures, there's a lot of conversation regarding depression, anxiety, mental illnesses. So, what next when we want to have the conversation regarding mental illnesses? What do you suggest, and what are some of the common problems that you face as someone who's expert in the field, and especially when clients come to interact with you or your patients come to interact with you? What are some of the common problems that you see with them?
So the first one that I would mention, and that's the most important one, is that people think that if they get labeled with a diagnosis, with a mental health diagnosis, it's going to be carried with them for the rest of their lives. But that's not true.
Okay.
I mean, there are some chronic illnesses in terms of mental health that, you know, they do stay with you for quite some time. But otherwise, there are problems that if you come up with meaningful solutions, then you can get rid of those diagnoses or the labels. But you know, there is this taboo in the society that, and again, you know, let me give you another example. This other day, I get a lot of like people from the corporate sector. So there was this lady who came into my practice, and the first thing when she came into my room, she was requesting, so you know how the setup over here in Pakistan, when you go to a hospital, all the OPD clinics are like, you know, in a hall, in a place,
Yes,
at one
yes,
place.
of course.
And their waiting area is just like, so for example, if you need to see a gynae doctor, you'll be waiting outside their office, right? There's not like a private waiting area.
Of course.
And so if you are waiting for a for a gynecologist, people would know that, okay, so this guy came to see a gynecologist. So the problem with this lady was that she was very hesitant to wait outside my room because she did not want anyone to know that she is seeking mental health services. Again, because of the stereotypes, because she was like, she had a food business, obviously not going to disclose her name, and a big name over there, and she was like very hesitant that I don't want people to know me because it might just affect my business, it might just affect my friend circle. So that was one thing that I felt very, I wouldn't say uncomfortable, but I think that is something that needs to be sort of like, you know, it has to be addressed, it has to be dealt with through, I think it's you know, when it's not just a job of a psychologist or a mental health professional to sort of like reach out to people and address these issues. I think it should be done at a very basic level, for example, at schools, for example, at universities.
Right.
Now, one good thing about the undergrad level education over here is that they do have psych courses which help people at undergrad level to sort of like understand their own emotional well-being and sort of like understand how to diagnose mental health symptoms at an early stage.
Right.
But that is something that is lacking at a primary level education.
And I do feel we also tend to demean the stresses, the anxiety and depression a lot, and we try to say it's just a phase of life, because obviously whenever you seek help, and help like Fahim mentioned about CBT and all of these therapies, they always help you in making yourself better, and I think you should always strive to become a better version of yourself, and there's no harm in seeking the help in the first place.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Roma, for coming here, for having this wonderful discourse about the mental health, the mental diseases, which is, I would say this is a pandemic which is across the world rising,
It is
right?
across the world, and I think now it's high time that we realize what mental illnesses are all about. We realize that it's okay to get help. We realize that it's okay to be a victim of a mental illness, and it's definitely the week that we're observing. And this week, I think, should make a difference in some way or the other in all of your lives, and I hope that it does, and I hope you get the awareness that is required by mental health professionals like Roma Shahid we have with us today. Thank you very much, Roma, for coming here and being a part of our program.
Guys. Thank you.
A complete pleasure. Well, with this, we come to the conclusion of our program. Inshallah ta'ala, we will be seeing you tomorrow. So till then, take care of yourselves, and of course, good morning.
Good morning.